What is the oldest mythology you know? It's probably Egyptian or maybe even Mesopotamian, right? What if I told you that there is an even older one? The oldest mythology that us humans currently know about is the Australian Aboriginal mythology, which dates all the way back to 65,000 BCE and it was spread out throughout the entire continent of Australia. Wow, that is old. But not as old as your mom. But what is the second oldest or the youngest one, or how many mythologies are even out there? Well, in this video we will be listing off every single mythology and folklore known to mankind, and we'll be putting them on a nice little timeline so that we can compare which one is the oldest and which one is the youngest. After the Australian Aboriginal mythology, the second oldest mythology is the Sun mythology, which dates back all the way to 20,000 BCE. After that, we have the Abenaki, which dates to 10,000 BC. We have the Berber, which dates back anywhere between 9600 to 7500 BCE. After that, we have Haida, which dates back to 8500 BC. Blackfoot, which dates 8000 BC. And wow, Blackfoot, that's such a badass name. Like, no, which mythology do you worship? Blackfoot. After that, we have Olon, which is, I hope I pronounced that right, which dates back to 8000 BC as well. We have the Irish folklore, which dates all the way back to 7000 BC. We have Igbo with 6000 BC, Dacian, which ranges anywhere between 5600 to 3500 BCE, Sumerian, which dates back to 4500 BC, Thracian, which dates to 4000 BC, as well as Estonian, which dates to 4000 BC. We have Proto-Indo-European, which can date anywhere between 4000 and 1000 BC. And finally, we have Egyptian, which dates anywhere between 3100 BC and 2686 BC. Now, a couple of disclaimers before we continue. These aren't all mythologies that ever existed in the history of mankind, because we still probably don't know all of them. Also, in regards to the dates and placements on the timeline, we don't know the exact dates because these mythologies were cultivated and conceived throughout decades and centuries. But to determine which one is the oldest, we opted to use the age of either a temple discovered or a piece of writing or an object that is tied to the mythology. But for those who didn't have even that, we decided to tie them to the age of the civilization that the mythology was worshipped in. Is this perfect? Heck no, not even close! This video shouldn't be treated as a 100% factual video. More so, the purpose of this video is to show just how old some of these mythologies are compared to one another, and to showcase just how many different mythologies are out there. Also, all sources and references used in making of this video shall be linked down in the description below. And trust me, there are a lot of them. Also, the mythologies that have this symbol next to them symbolize the age of mythology that we decide to tie to the age of the civilization that used that said mythology. Now, is this accurate? Heck no, because either the mythology or the civilization that used the mythology can be way older than one another. But hey, this is the best we could do with our limited budget of $5.06 and a McDonald's double cheeseburger. Next up, we have the Inuit mythology, which dates back to 3000 BC. Alongside with Chilote, Yoruba, Basque, Hurrian, Nuu and Dinka mythologies. If my history professor could hear me now. After that, we have the Elamite mythology, which dates to 2700 BC, Mbuti, which dates to 2500 BC, Hindu, which dates anywhere between 2300 BC and 1500 BC, Bantu, coming in at 2000 BC, alongside with Iroquois, also 2000 BC, and Canaanite, sounded Italian, which also comes at 2000 BC. Next up, we have Hittite, which goes from 1600 BC to 1180 BC, Olmec at 1600 BC as well, Persian, which comes in at 1500 BC. Then we have Meitei that comes in at 1500 BC, alongside with Mayan and Mixtec mythologies as well. Chinese mythology makes its grand appearance, coming in at 1200 BC, alongside with Korean mythology, also coming in at 1200 BC. Then next up we have Tahitian, which also goes at somewhere around circa 1000 BC, Kalenjin coming in at 9th century BC, Scythian also at 9th century BC, Etruscan ranging anywhere between the 8th and 3rd century BC. Then we have the Greek mythology coming in at 700 BC, arguably the most famous mythology out there, but also the one with the most misinformation going on about it, especially with the representation in various media. Then we have the Babylonian mythology also coming in at 700 BC, alongside the Ossetian also coming in at 7th century BC, the Buddhist mythology coming in at 6th century BC, Zapotec coming in with 5th century BC, Illyrian coming in with 4th century BC, and finally the Roman mythology, which dates anywhere between the years of 20 BC and 20 AD. And with that, we enter the AD era. Woo! And before we continue on with our quest of mapping out all the mythologies throughout all space and time, we first have to mention some mythologies that we couldn't figure out where to put on the timeline. Like, these mythologies can be anywhere from 300 years old to 3 million years old. Like, give us a break. There are some historians that spend their lifetime trying to figure out how old a single mythology is, and I'm just a hungry YouTuber. With that being said, let's get to it. We have the Guarani mythology, Brazilian mythology, Talmancan mythology, Haitian mythology, Tsimshian mythology, Pawnee mythology, Lakota, Hopi, Crow, Creek, Choctaw, Cherokee, Welsh, Cornish, Scottish, Frankish, English, Sami, Mangaravan, Micronesian, Papuan, Fijian, Arabian, Lagbara, Lotuko, Maasai, Lozi, Malagasy, Efik, Serer, Circassian, Georgian, Turkic, Azerbaijani, Ainu, Bai, Manchu, Kyong, Ryukyuan, Siberian, Romani, Burmese, Indonesian, Malaysian, Philippine, Abrahamic, Kurdish, and Komi. No, not that Komi, the other Komi. Man, when I started to make this video, I didn't think pronouncing these names was gonna be this hard. But yeah, like I said, these can be anywhere on the timeline. Well, to be fair, any of these mythologies could be anywhere on the timeline. But you know, from now on, the rankings should be like 5% more accurate because we have like 10% more accurate data on all of these mythologies and folklore. And first up, we have the Japanese mythology, which is said to be 2000 years old, which puts it right at the beginning of this AD era we're currently in. Anak going into the 1st century. Then we have Navajo mythology and folklore, which is said to date back all the way to 200 AD. Brenton, 3rd century. We have Baluba coming in at 400 AD. Armenian going anywhere between 4th and 7th century. Hawaiian also going anywhere between the 4th and 7th century. Mongolian starting at 5th century. Slavic also going anywhere between the 5th and 6th century. Anglo-Saxon also going anywhere from 5th to 7th century AD. We have Continental Germanic, which is dating back to the 6th century. Muisca also dating back all the way to the 6th century. Tibetan dating at 7th century. Zuni also in 7th century. Celtic, which is going anywhere between 8th century and 12th century AD, Hungarian at 8th century, Spanish folklore at 9th century, Norse mythology coming in at only 1000 AD. Yeah, it's a pretty young mythology, and also this is based on like the first stories that we know about it that we can like date, you know? Not date in the meaning of like dating. You know what I mean. We have Dogon coming in at 10th century, Vietnamese also coming in 10th century, followed by Rapa Nui in 10th century, Samoan in 10th century, and Lithuanian in 10th century. Why was that so hard to say? Lithuanian in 10th century. We have Somali dating back to 1200 AD, Akan also being present in 12th century, with Inca in 12th century, Latvian which started in 13th century, but most of its folklore stories come from 18th and 19th centuries. We have Tumbuka dating all the way back to 13th century, followed by Aztecs, Maori, and Thai, all in 13th century. Congo dating anywhere between 13th and 14th century. Urhobo also dating all the way back to the 14th century. Zulu going all the way back to 15th century, followed with Finnish and Albanian mythologies as well. We have monks that date all the way back to 16th century, followed with Bushongo and Dahomean, which were all in 16th century, which makes them the youngest mythologies out there. And with that, we have completed our whole mythology timeline. There have been 134 mythologies and different cultural folklore that we know about. The oldest mythology is the Australian Aboriginal mythology, which started all the way back in 65,000 BC, and the youngest ones are the monks slash Bushongo slash Lacomian mythologies, which all started in the 16th century AD. That means that there is a 67,000 year difference between the oldest findings of mythologies and people worshipping stuff and the, well, youngest mythologies and folklore that we know about. And let's be honest, new myths and folklore are being made even in this time that we're living in right now. That just shows how rich and vast human culture is that's been cultivated through all of these eons of our existence. Now, of course, not all of these mythologies and folklore are equal. Some have more text and lore behind them, while some have way less. But I hope this video showed you just how many different mythologies are out there, and I also hope it provoked you to think about how many more do we not know about.